Did Kentucky just land their starting backcourt on the same day?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host today, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and a reminder that you can get every single episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all of you everydayers out there, as well as all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Coming up today, the transfer portal is closed. It's a next step in the timeline of leading up to next season and roster construction and figuring things out. And so we'll take a look at some things there. Creighton got some great news from their big man. Samford got some bad news from their big man. But we got to start again with Kentucky. It's pretty funny because we led off yesterday's show talking about Koby Brea and whether or not Kentucky would be able to win the sweepstakes for him. It was interesting because I called it basically like Kentucky, would they land Koby's services by default? And I didn't mean that as any sort of slight to Koby or to Kentucky, but I think it was perceived that way as a lot of people. By default, I just meant Koby Brea had this final five of a whole host of blue bloods, and the other four, for various reasons, just fell off. And so Kentucky, just by showing up, kind of became the default. So that's no kind of bad thing. It's just like, hey, we're the only one left at the dance. Let's dance, baby. Come on with it. And so I love this for Kentucky. That was no shade, no pun intended there either with shade. And so this is great news. So the logical conclusion to me of Koby Brea had 5 teams. Something happened to make 4 of those not logical options. So there's Kentucky. But then also on Wednesday, Kerr Kriisa, the transfer from Arizona to West Virginia, now back in the transfer portal, he winds up committing on Wednesday as well to the Wildcats. Really funny exchange on Twitter between Matt Jones of KSR, who said, by the way, if you've never watched Kerr Kriisa play, he's one of those dudes that you love on your team that every single one of your rival fan bases will despise, end quote. Connor Hope from Heat Check Basketball quote tweets this and says, basically like mimicking the style, but the flip of it says, Kerr Kriisa is also sometimes that guy you hate on your team, especially when he has one of those 1 of 12 games. And here's the thing for me is that both Matt and Connor are correct here, because whether you're an opposing fan base of Kerr Kriisa or the fan base that Kerr Kriisa plays for, he's going to drive you crazy either way. But he's going to have some great moments as well if you're the fan of the team that he's on. And so it's just one of those things you got to learn to take the good with the bad and recognize that there's going to be some up and downs. Now, he's a 5th-year guy. It's his last stop. Maybe this is the moment. But you get Koby Brea and you get Kerr Kriisa in the same day if you're Kentucky. And what I want to do is pull up my scholarship chart. I've actually never done this on Locked On College Basketball. I'll often show it in other places on Twitter and things like that. So what you're looking at if you're watching on YouTube, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can go find this actually on my Twitter feed of Kentucky's scholarship quota for the upcoming season as it stands right now. Each team gets 13 total scholarships they can utilize. As of today, Thursday, May 2nd, Kentucky's used 9 of those, meaning they have 4 left. For those of you looking, you can see that 5 of those 9 scholarships are taken by student athletes who are using their 5th year of COVID eligibility. So Kentucky getting old here, working on learning how to get old and stay old, as that old adage goes. But the thing is In some ways, this is one and done all over again because 5 of these 9 guys are going to be right out the door because they got no eligibility left. But it is a starting point for Mark Pope and company. If you can build a couple of pieces, get in a few other pieces, and then you feel like in good shape. You're in good shape. All told, 5 super seniors, 1 junior, that's Otega Oweh, 1 sophomore, Brandon Garrison, 2 freshmen right now, Colin Chandler, who, yes, he's a freshman, but he's 21, and then Travis Perry, the guy that stuck around. So all told, that's 9 total scholarships taken, 4 open. The 5 super seniors, Koby Brea, Lamont Butler coming over from San Diego State, Andrew Carr from Wake Forest, Kerr Kriisa we already talked about, and then Amari Williams. So that's what you're looking at. And the makeup of this roster, you talk about getting older, just those 5 super seniors combined, I added up all the games they've played in college, 565 of them, just those 5 dudes combined. Not to mention Colin Chandler, again, is 21. So Kentucky is getting old. Will that be a sustainable thing or just a one-off this year with all these super seniors? I don't know, but it's where we're at today. In terms of further makeup like guards and bigs, you got quite a few guard options. Brea, Butler, Chandler, Kriisa, Oweh, Perry, all of that. And then 3 bigs in Andrew Carr, Brandon Garrison, as well as Amari Williams. So you look at all this roster makeup, and here's where I'm at. I start to then ask the question, okay, we're to the point now where the transfer portal is closed. What do we, Mark Pope and Alvin Brooks, associate head coach, and all these other things, what do we still need? Well, for me, I look at it and it's like, you got some guys. I need a dude. I need a Dillingham, just a walking bucket. And I know some of these guys, like Koby Brea, can obviously fill it up. But I need a dude that can go get a bucket at any level at any moment. Again, like a Dillingham. What can we get for that? I also think we need some more size. We need some more front court depth. At least one more in the front court. And then there's never enough shooting and wings in college basketball, so you go find those. So some of the names I look at and think about, do you continue targeting Jackson Robinson? Wooga Poplar, like those are a couple names to me that would round this out really, really nicely. You lost on Javon Small, who commits elsewhere. We'll talk about him later. But I like the idea of guys like a Poplar coming over from Miami or Jackson Robinson coming to just keep playing with Mark Pope, right? So those are the kind of the other needs I look at, a walking bucket and more in the front court. And as you think about the starting lineup, this is where it gets a little weird to me. Because I've been wrestling with it. I'm curious, especially you Kentucky fans tuning in, to hear what you think about the starting backcourt. Because it could be Kerr Kriisa and Koby Brea, but there are some defensive things that I think that lacks. But if you go with the defense in your starting lineup, like a Lamont Butler, I feel like you lose some other things. Because if you're doing it today, you could go Kerr Kriisa, that's your true point guard, Koby Brea, the dead-eye shooter, Otega Oweh, and then I'd go Andrew Carr, Brandon Garrison. But then you got Lamont Butler coming off the bench, and I don't know if that's what you want. It's hard to bench Butler, but again, Kerr Kriisa is the point guard with this thing, and I don't like that, but it feels needed. Andy Patton and I were texting about this on Wednesday. He's my co-host on this show, if you've never seen it before. But what he said to me, and I like how he put it, the combo of Butler, Brea, Oweh isn't exactly a lot of facilitation, and the offense could get stagnant. But if you work at alleviating that, Kriisa and Brea, hurts on defense. So to me, there's like this trade-off that Mark Pope's going to have to figure out. What are the most important things? And I think he'll tinker. I would tinker. What are the most important things? What do we need? And some of what you do in the backcourt might be resolved by who it is that's yet to fill out this roster and who you're playing at the 3, the 4, and the 5. I think all of that is going to come together. So right now, I think Kentucky's going to be in a little bit of a waiting game now to see what else comes and where we go from here. A team that's no longer in the waiting game is Creighton, because they got great news on portal deadline day that Ryan Kalkbrenner is back. Massive news, literally, for Greg McDermott and the Blue Jays. And we'll talk about that in just a second, right after I tell you about Monopoly Go. All right, look, game off. We got to pause here and talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Hey, shade, flag on the play. You already talked about that so many times lately, but there's just so much good stuff that I can't quit talking about it. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments. And in these tournaments, you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Let me tell you about a couple of them. You can get unique stickers to trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. You get cool new playing pieces that you can use to travel the boards with. Or how about they've got all these hilarious emojis that you can use to taunt your friends when you're smashing their buildings or heisting their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day because they've got constantly changing tournaments and challenges. And a lot of these include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, want to move around a little bit. We're going to talk some Big East, some Big 12, and some SoCon. SoCon, shade what? Yes, sir, SoCon. Let's start in Nebraska, where Creighton got such big news on Wednesday, on portal deadline day. There had been a lot of speculation if big man Ryan Kalkbrenner would come back for school for one more year, if he would go to the NBA draft, or if he would even hop in the transfer portal. And here it was down to decision day, and we had still heard nothing. And quite frankly, I for a while thought he was going to enter the portal. And then as it got closer, there was a lot of scuttlebutt of like, hey, both he and Steven Ashworth are actually going to come back to school. And so on Wednesday, made that official, did Ryan Kalkbrenner. And it was pretty cool because Coach Greg McDermott kind of handled it in the same way that Kansas and Hunter Dickinson did, where basically Bill Self had tweeted at Hunter Dickinson, and it was this whole kind of cutesy and in interplay on Twitter, pretty hilarious stuff. Well, Coach McDermott did the same thing. He leaned into that Kansas bit. He said, hey, at Ryan Kalkbrenner, it sounds like Coach Bill Self and Hunter Dickinson are coming to Omaha on December 4th. I could use your help that night. What do you think? And so it was a little bit, Kalkbrenner responds with something about delaying his honeymoon. Maybe he was getting married over Christmas break and going on a honeymoon. I'm actually not sure, but that's how I read that. So pretty funny stuff, and you love to see that. But for Creighton, this news is so good because think about it. You've lost Trey Alexander to the draft. You've lost Baylor Scheierman, excuse me. You know you're getting Mason Miller back, but as we've kind of joked all year long, he's who I call Goose because he so often has a goose egg in the scoring column. And you were hopeful for Steven Ashworth back, and it sounds like now with Kalkbrenner back, Ashworth just basically came out and said, this is the best birthday present I could ever get, having you back as well. So what this all says to me is that Greg McDermott's getting back Ryan Kalkbrenner, Steven Ashworth, and Mason Miller. Get 3 of your 5 starters. You'll take that. And then you add in Pop Isaacs. That's big time. Jemiah Neal, love that. And so kind of to me, that's your starting 5 right there for Creighton. Not to mention they've got a good recruiting class coming in. Jackson McAndrew, Larry Johnson, and our guy, Ty Davis, that we've had on the show here before. And so, do those guys, that's the big question. Do they fill the massive holes left by Trey Alexander and Baylor Scheierman? I don't know. And it's in a different way of like what Pop Isaacs will do. So we'll keep our eye on it and we'll see what happens. Next, let's go to the Big 12. We've already mentioned this name on the show, Javon Small, who was an Oklahoma State transfer. I know Kentucky was kind of hopeful that they could maybe land him, but he winds up going to West Virginia. Okay, great, cool. At 247, he was the number 10 ranked transfer. And I know coming out of Oklahoma State, it's like, really? But yeah, legitimately. Last year, 15.1 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. You love that kind of capability at all 3 of those positions. And for me, what I like about this all the more is Darren DeVries has his son, Tucker. Tucker's one of the best scorers in the entire nation, but he needs help around him. And you bring in somebody like this that can score, that can facilitate, that can rebound. 4.1 assists last year for Javon Small. I'm going to tell you right now, that number is about to go up, 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 up. It's going to be big time. And really curious to see how quickly Coach DeVries can get things going there in West Virginia. Because, I mean, it's just, let's be honest, it's been a rough year, been a rough time for the Mountaineers. I just would like to see West Virginia rise back up. Now, who knows in this new look Big 12? It's just going to get more tough, more difficult, and on and on and on. But there's hopes. There's beginnings of it, and I think Small is a great piece to add to that West Virginia roster. Last thing we want to talk about, I said we'd go to the SoCon. Why? Do you recall last year, one of the this March Madness, one of the trendiest first round upset choices was Samford over a depleted Kansas team. And I tell you what, the Samford Bulldogs came this close to doing it, folks. Kansas had just enough in the end. Although, remember that bad call? Oh, I still get frustrated about that. But one of the names you probably remember from that game on the Samford side is Achor Achor. Love this dude, love his game, love what he brings. He went last minute portaling out of Samford, had a very heartfelt message. And I just, one of those where he's going to have multiple Power 6, or I guess Power 5 now, because rest in peace, Pac-12, Power 5 conference schools reaching out to him. But I just hate it. I hate it, what it means for Samford. It's a big blow to the Bulldogs, who are losing a lot of their scoring, a lot of their minutes. I was talking to a source there at Samford on Wednesday, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, it might be 9 of our top 10 scorers. And so it's tough. It's very tough. And so we'll see how Samford and Coach Bucky McMillan can rebuild and reload and be ready to go again with Bucky ball for us in the 24-25 season. Well, Achor Achor is one of the last ones to hop in, but the transfer portal is now closed. Everybody breathe. Everybody sleep. I want to just say some things about that, where we go from here, where your brain space should be as a fan of your team, and we'll do that in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, the weather is finally heating up, and that means it's time to go take in some MLB games. Great news! Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite features of theirs is last-minute deals. For example, maybe you want to get in and go see at the last minute on a whim an NBA playoff game. Well, you can save up to 60% off buying those last minute tickets, or for any other sports or concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is. And maybe you're like me and you worry about, oh, what if I buy a ticket from this third-party site and it's bogus and I get turned away? No worries, because with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. You're probably feeling what I'm feeling right now. I love that peace of mind in a big way. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, guys, I'm recording this show after midnight Eastern time on what's now technically Thursday on the East Coast. So for you, as you're listening to or watching this, it'll be the same. And I wanted to do that in case there were any just like a last minute rush on players entering the portal. And there really wasn't. I mentioned Achor Achor, but outside of that, not really any big names down the stretch. It kind of a lot of everything had already happened. Now, I need you to remember this about the transfer portal closing. Names can and will continue to leak out. So just because the portal entry deadline, I should say more specifically, has come and gone, it's not that we have to have heard about it. It's just that it's got to be like postmarked by Wednesday, May 1st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. As long as a player has made mention of it to someone in their athletic department, doesn't matter who it is, as long as there's like a time that like I could text you and say, I'd like to enter the transfer portal. That's good enough. And so with all of that said, then the paperwork takes some time. And that's why as we get to later on today or Friday, or maybe even into the weekend, we might get a couple more names. It's like, oh, that guy's in the portal. Did not realize that. And that's a very real possibility that we have happen just about every year with this or with the early entry deadline, things like that. So just be a little bit patient with it. Start to get more comfortable, but just remember that that's a possibility. By the way, Dan Hurley, love or hate UConn, love or hate Dan Hurley. I think he's great. And he had a fantastic video that came out earlier on Wednesday, where it was just like a first person camera footage where it walks through UConn's facility, winds its way around through the halls and all the way up to Coach Hurley's office. And he's just sitting there staring at a countdown clock on the wall, which is presumably the point being that it's counting down until the transfer portal is closed so that he can breathe a sigh of relief and start to figure out what's next. Brilliantly well done. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Now, while I'm asking you to exercise caution, I do want to give you some good news. Remember that the early entry NBA draft deadline has come and gone. That was Saturday night at midnight. And now the transfer portal entry deadline has come and gone. And again, I say entry specifically because the deadline right now is just about being in the portal. You don't have to commit until you just got to be enrolled by the time school starts in the fall, right? So whatever that is for you, great, knock yourself out. But whether you were an undergrad or a grad, remember they changed that just last week. It was ratified on Monday. Whether you're either entity, you have to have declared by now. If you haven't, you're stuck. I mean, I guess technically you could go transfer, but you would not be covered under the play right away thing. You'd have to wait a year. So nobody's going to do that. So here's what this means. If you're a fan of Team X and you've been shaking in your bones, worried that player Z and player Q and player E are all going to enter the transfer portal, you can rest easy now. Now, again, I said there's going to be a little trickle out, so maybe don't completely rest until we get to about maybe Monday, Tuesday of next week. But for the most part, you can now start to look at your roster and say, all right, nobody else can leave for the NBA. Nobody else can transfer out. I'm starting to get at least a little bit of a shape of what our roster is going to be next year. And that's good news because here's what it says to me. If I'm a coach, if I'm, the head of an NIL collective, whatever it is, I can say, all right, here's who we've got. Here's what we've got. We know these guys cannot go anywhere or are not going to go anywhere. So then let's figure out what it is that we still need to fill out our team, because there's a whole slew of dudes still out there waiting in the portal. And perhaps even more importantly, not just what we need, but who we need, because we're not trying to fill positions. We're trying to fill it with people. That's infinitely more important. Now, obviously, there are certain people you're looking for that fit that position, but it's ultimately about a cultural fit for your university. Unless you don't care and you're just throwing the bag, cool, whatever, knock yourself out. I don't think that's a wise move, but okay, fine. Now, one thing that does muddy up this whole conversation is there are multiple players going through the NBA draft process that are going to come back to school. There's going to be a bunch of those just because there is every year, right? Like that's going to happen. And so there's this weird patience of like, I'd really like to have player X on my team, but I don't want him on my team if my guy that's in the NBA draft comes back. But I also don't want to miss out and get nobody. Like last year, Kentucky was looking at Hunter Dickinson. And Sheboy had said, hey, look, don't wait on me, whatever, it's cool. Go ahead and get Hunter if that's what you need to do. And ultimately, they didn't get either of them. So there's all of this. It's a weird thing to play. But I just want to say, with the portal now closed, at least you can have some peace of mind that your guys that you've already got locked in aren't going anywhere. And then you continue to build and see what's next. All right, gang, thanks so much for tuning in, being part of today's show. If you're not subscribed to Locked On College Basketball on audio and video, make sure to do that on audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just find Locked On College Basketball, hit subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just down at the right corner of the screen. Click that. Subscribe to the show so you get notified all the time when we've got shows going on. Also, if you are not part of the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, we'd love to have you. The link's in the show notes. It's free to join. Come for the college basketball. Stay for the community. All right. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.